It's July 2024 and I've headed into the Mole Valley to visit the southern flanks of the chalk hills of the North Downs, perfect wine growing country. "21 miles south of London and close to the intersection of two valleys, the north-south Mole Gap where the River Mole cuts through the North Downs and the west-east Vale of Holmesdale, the market town of Dorking retains the same layout that it's had since at least medieval times and possibly as far back as the Anglo-Saxon era, with its main streets meeting at Pump Corner forming a Y shape. There's been human habitation in the area since at least 10,000 years ago, with charred hazelnut shells, carbon dated to around 8,500 BCE, being discovered during the rebuilding of the town's Waitrose supermarket in 2013. The history of the town, from the remains of dinosaurs through to the modern day, is detailed in the Dorking Museum and Heritage Centre, which charts the history of the town. The town has evidence for Bronze Age settlements, a likely Roman settlement, and pottery shards dating to the Saxon era, which is where the original name of the town, Dorshingers, likely came from, and that's the name it was known by when it appeared in the Domesday Book in 1086. The town thrived through the Tudor period before declining in the 17th century due to poor infrastructure and competition from neighbouring towns. The town became a haven for nonconformists, including future author Daniel Defoe, who lived in Dorking as a child. 6 of the Mayflower Pilgrims also came from the town. The town started to develop again with the improvement of transport links, first with a new turnpike, now the A24, and then the railway line, both following the natural gap in the North Downs created by the River Mole and providing direct links north to London and south towards the Sussex coast. Further development of the land on and around the Downs is now constrained as it sits within the designated Metropolitan Greenbelt land of London, created in the middle of the 20th century to prevent any major developments from taking place to avoid the continued spread of London outwards. The Anglican parish church of St Martin's can trace its roots back to the 12th century when a new church was built to replace an older one on the site. Expanded in the 14th century, the church remained untouched then until major renovations took place in the 19th century, which included the nave being rebuilt in the mid-1830s and the chancel being rebuilt in the mid-1860s. Further restorations took place in the 1870s, alongside the construction of a new tower and a 210-foot spire, which was completed in 1877. Due to its originally rural location, the town has been surrounded by a number of farms and estates over the years, which have included many stately homes, most of which, like Deepdean, have been completely lost. Just over a mile east of the town are the ruins of an older stately home, Betchworth Castle, today just the crumbling ruins of what was once a grand fortified medieval stone house. In fact, Betchworth Castle's ruination started when it was purchased by Henry Thomas Hope in 1834 to add to his Deepdean estate, and used much of the building material for use in other projects, causing the building to become a folly, though one that's outlasted Deepdean House itself. Bradley Farm was owned in the 16th century by John Denby, who gave his name to the estate and lands. Over the following centuries, the estate passed through many owners before finally being purchased in 1851 by master builder Thomas Cubitt. At the time of the purchase, Cubitt was nearing completion of works on Osborne House on the Isle of Wight for Queen Victoria and Prince Albert.
Is it just an actual, not is it just a actual use swap? My sister used to go there.
He set about constructing a new mansion on the land in a similar style to that of Osborne House. After Thomas's death in 1855, it was passed to his son George, who remained resident until the death of his wife in 1905, at which point he moved to London and passed the house down to his son, Henry. Following the death of his father in 1917, the combination of death duties and the costs to upkeep a large estate during the war resulted in Henry struggling for money and starting the process of auctioning off parts of the estate. The estate breakups continued until Henry's death in 1947, where the estate passed to his fourth son, Roland, with yet more death duties. Roland transformed former staff buildings into a new smaller home for himself and slowly stripped the original mansion of fixtures and fittings. Eventually the shell of the mansion was demolished in 1953. There were still death duties outstanding, but in 1959 the Treasury struck a deal with a family to accept 1,128 acres of land in lieu of payment, which was subsequently passed on to the National Trust, with another 245 acres following in a similar pattern in 1963. Having moved off the estate in 1979, Roland's son Henry put what was left of the estate on the market in 1984. The estate was purchased by local businessman Adrian White, and in 1986 he revived the original name for the estate as he started a wine business, establishing Denbies Wine Estates on the south-facing lands. Today, Denbies has 265 acres of vineyard, which represent more than 10% of the total plantings in the whole of the UK. The vineyards sit on the chalk hills of the North Downs, which has a soil perfect for growing grapes, and very similar in structure and style to that of the vineyards of the Champagne region of France. The Denbies Estate has a number of public footpaths that run through the land, allowing you to walk past the vines and take in the views of the North Downs. But you can also take part in tours from the visitor centre that take you up into the higher parts of the vineyards to get a good overview of the full size of the estate, along with the odd sampling or two of the products along the way. The tours also allow you to go in between the vines as well, to see the grapes growing and to learn more about the winemaking process and how it works in the UK. The tour ends down in the cellars beneath the main estate house with a final sample of some of the vineyard's production. Death duties and the threat of land value taxes in the early part of the 20th century is part of the reason for most of Box Hill, one of the most famous and visited parts of the North Downs, being almost completely in the ownership of the National Trust. Whilst it's not the highest point on the North Downs, that goes to Botley Hill some 13 miles to the east at 885 feet, or even the highest point in the vicinity, with Leith Hill on the adjacent Greensand Ridge at 965 feet, just 5 miles to the southwest. It is, though, the most visited summit, with its close location to both rail and road having attracted visitors from long before the land was even technically open to the public. Thomas Hope, father of Henry Thomas Hope mentioned earlier, purchased the hill in 1831, shortly before his death, to add to his Deepdean estate. His wife was the first person to officially allow free access to the beauties of the hill, but records show that day trippers have been arriving in significant numbers since the early 1700s. In his 1909 budget, Chancellor David Lloyd George outlined proposals for a land value tax, which prompted the trustees for Deepdean Estate to start to sell off the open countryside land on the western flank of the hill to avoid a potentially crippling bill. Local landowner Leopold Salomons of the nearby Norbury Park estate purchased around 230 acres of Box Hill in 1913 for £16,000, about £1.5 million today, and the following year donated the land to the National Trust. Further purchases, bequeathments and handovers to pay off tax bills continued until the Trust owned 1,200 acres of the site by the mid-1980s. Today, the whole of the western side of the hill, from the River Mole up to the village of the same name, close to the summit area, in the care of the National Trust, along with the adjoining Mickleham Downs and Headley Heath. There are multiple routes up to the top of the hill, but the most popular, the steepest, and probably the one that's been around the longest, starts at the stepping stones across the River Mole. An ancient trackway along the North Downs escarpment can be dated back to 600 BCE, but has probably been in existence since the Stone Age, and it's likely it crossed the River Mole at the location of present-day stepping stones. The stepping stones themselves are a much later addition, with the first record of them only appearing in 1841. The stones were removed from the river at the outbreak of World War II as an anti-invasion measure, but new stones were restored to their rightful position on the 11th of September 1946. From the stepping stones, the path rises rapidly up the hill through the woods made up of numerous trees, including England's largest area of native box woodland, which is where the hill gets its name from. The climb is pretty steep, rising up 459 feet in under half a mile, but quite soon you're rewarded as the trees and bushes start to clear and a view down into Dorking, across the Greensand Ridge and beyond open up below you. There are also good views across onto the part of the North Downs Ridge that houses Denbies Vineyard, and on a typical summer's day, the ability to have advanced warning of the next hefty shower as it approaches from the west. Whilst it's not the highest point on the hill, Salomons monument at 564 feet, dedicated to the man who donated the land to the National Trust, does offer the best views and is the most popular viewpoint on the hill. From here it's possible to look out over the Surrey and Sussex Weald towards the hills of the South Downs. Things haven't always been as peaceful on Box Hill as they are today, and the latter half of the 19th century there was growing public concern about the ability for British forces to repel an invasion of the country. To set the public's mind at ease, 13 mobilisation centres, collectively known as the London Defence Positions, were built, with 2 being constructed on the top of Box Hill to act as a last line of defence protecting the Empire's capital. Box Hill Fort, and on the other side of the village, Betchworth Fort. Building works on the fort started in 1899, but just 6 years later a review of defence policy resulted in all 13 forts being declared redundant, with the forts and land being sold back to their original owners in 1908. Both forts were listed, and Box Hill Fort is now a protected bat roosting location looked after by the National Trust. Dorking railway station, sometimes referred to as Dorking Main, is located on the Mole Valley line from London towards Horsham, with direct trains to both London Waterloo in 50 minutes and London Victoria in 60 minutes. Dorking Deepdene and Dorking West stations are both located on the North Downs line, which runs from Reading to Redhill via Guildford and Dorking, with connections in Reading to Rail Air coaches to London Heathrow, the UK's busiest airport, and connections in Redhill for trains to London Gatwick, the UK's second busiest airport, and London Luton, the UK's fifth busiest airport.